Good afternoon, everybody. How's the sound for those that don't? Great. My name is Jack Wilkie-Jans. I'm a Waanji, Chungunji and Tepethigi artist, writer, arts worker and occasional political sticky beak around these traps. Thank you all for joining us here on the last day of the Cairns Tropical Writers Festival 2024, here on the homelands of the Gimoy Wallabara Yidinji peoples, who are the original storytellers of this place and to whom I, and I'm sure on all our behalf, pay my respects and gratitude. If I do appear nervous, I will own it. I have every cause to be, because joining me today, and it is my absolute honour and privilege to be joined here today by Professor Alexis Wright. Alexis Wright is a Waanji author described by many critics and academia to be the most important Australian/First Nations writer today. She is, of course, the author of acclaimed works such as Carpentaria, 2006, for which she received the Miles Franklin Award, The Swan Book, 2013, and Grog War from 1997. Alexis was selected as the Bois Bouvier Chair in Australian Literature at the University of Melbourne from 2017 to 2022, and in 2018 she was awarded the Stella Prize for her work Tracker. Last year she was awarded the Creative Australia Award for Lifetime Achievement in Literature. She is a Professor of Creative Writing at the Western Sydney University, and her latest epic novel, Praiseworthy, and if you haven't got a copy, you will be able to buy a copy after the session out in the foyer, is indeed praiseworthy. She is a keen understander of our collective human condition, and as a wordsmith and storyteller, Alexis is an unadulterated master of her craft. So, Alexis, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and I'm really honoured and I'm so pleased to be doing this session with you, a Waanji man, from our country and in the Gulf of Carpentaria. So I also wanted to, I have to acknowledge the Gimoy, Wallabanga, Yundinji, and your Granji people, and the sovereign Yidinji government, and for want to acknowledge being on your country today, and your elders past and present, and it's an honour to be here. I love being here, and this is the third time I've been to the Writers Festival, and I've enjoyed it each time. And I also want to acknowledge my own traditional country, the Waanji Nation, the Gulf of Carpentaria, and all our associated nations in the Gulf, and countrymen and countrywomen and children and everybody. So it's a great honour to be back up here, and from Melbourne, and where it's 40 degrees, I think, down there today. So we're having a weekend away from it, the last burst before the autumn sets in and the winter. But it's lovely here, and we came on Friday, and it was raining, and even the rain feels better up north. It certainly does.
Well, I just came from Melbourne as well, and somebody there said that it's dusty rain. Yeah. That everything comes down, doesn't clean anything. So here we've got a bit of lovely cleansing air, and
it's beautiful.
And it is great to have you here. And of course, I'm not sure if everybody has been able to familiarise themselves with Praiseworthy. So before we dive in, I'm wondering if Alexis, if you would please read an introduction to the novel.
Certainly, yeah. All right, I'm reading from the beginning of the book. It's called New Gods, beginning with story. Once upon a fine time for some people in the world, but not so plenteous nor perfect for others, there lived a culture dreamer, obsessing about the era. He was no great dreamer, no greater than the rest of the juggernauts in his heartbroken, storm country people's humanity. They knew just as much as he did about surviving on a daily basis, and about how to make sacrifices of themselves and all the catastrophic times generated by the mangy dogs who had stolen their traditional land. These people, after the generations of dealing with the land theft, criminals, like many others around the world, had turned themselves not into a tangled web of despair, but into some of the best fighters of all times. They used pure guts for improving life and said they were in it for the long run. Theirs was a sovereign worldview, the main view acceptable to their governing ancestors, a law growing through belief in its own endlessness and through resetting the survival barometer from millennia a couple of 100 years ago by evolving a new gauge, something like a moth sonar, for only hearing what it wanted to hear. But to be frank, the facet worked like a shield for seeing what they wanted to see of the world, or to shut the whole thing out forever, and for deciding whether they wanted to speak at all. For sometimes this world never spoke for years. Then when it did, spoke wreckage words, like a piece of heaven heavy with intent, firing on all cylinders from the sky. So this dreamer fellow really had some nerve, speaking doubt stuff in the god gravitas of these clergy-oriented people, and like acting as though he was a better type of Jesus, more Messiah than they were themselves, while preaching from the unpopular pulpit of himself out on the street corner every other Sunday in front of all their self-determined denominational churches, and always, like too many times before, asking the same old question, hey Mop, what's the future going to be, what not? I'll leave it there.
Sounds good. That's great, thank you, Alexis. So we probably got, well, let's dive straight in, because how today's session will work is I'll ask a few questions of Alexis, and then we will have, well, we're hoping to have a fairly decent amount of time, probably, hopefully aim for 20 to 15 minutes towards the end for Q&A. So as you're listening and learning about Praiseworthy, you know, if you have any questions, try to hang on to them for the end. Mm-hmm. So first off, Alexis, would you please explain the setting of Praiseworthy to our audience, and especially introduce some of the themes and some of the broad issues that play for that township?
Praiseworthy is a fictional place. It's you know, set in Northern Australia. It's not, you know, particular to anywhere, or it's a composite of a lot of things that we all know and understand, and well, for me anyway, how I understand it anyway. And I thought really long and hard and really deeply about how to write this book, and I was asking very, you know, serious questions about our world and what's happening, and how of the world in general, and particularly about global warming and the fact that, you know, the planet is heating up, you know, faster than what we think, and we keep on going the same way, and it's you know, we don't seem to understand we need to get a bit serious about this, more serious than what we have, or we are, and what happens in, you know, what happens in the world to me is also happening. It also affects us. You know, we're not isolated. You know, nobody's isolated. We're all in this together. And as Indigenous people, it worried me about, you know, we're already treated in the way that we are. You know, we don't get our voices heard or understood, and our sovereignty recognised, and all those things that we've been fighting for a very, very long time. And so I was wondering, as the world gets warmer and things happen to as they are happening to people worldwide, with the type of things that are happening in the world, you know, where do we stand in all this? You know, when the times get tougher, you know, how much tougher is it going to get for us? And you know, who decides on, you know, virtually who lives and who dies, and you know, whose land is whose, and so on. So I was asking those sort of questions, and you know, how do we fit into all that, in the future, and the fact that, you know, we all understand, you know, that we're all suffering from you know, catastrophic events, you know, unpredicted catastrophic events that are happening more frequently, and a lot of, you know, our own mob, they live on, you know, really hard conditions, you know, and as you know, on communities, and as it gets hotter, and I just want to have people can survive. Myself, you know, when people can't afford to you run air conditionings or fans, and they're living in, you know, really substandard homes and dwellings, and temperatures soaring. It's, you know, the other day it was 50 degrees, I think, in Birdsville or something, and so I was thinking about these things, and came up with some of the ideas for the book. The book grew over a very long period of time. It took 10 years to write, but in saying that, I was doing other things at the same time. I was also producing Tracker, the collective memoir of an old friend of mine who's passed away now, Tracker till now. And so Tracker was a you know, phenomenal person. You know, everybody said he was larger than life. You know, he was, they'd say he's too much, and he had ideas running out of him left, right, and centre all the time, and he was incredible. You know, he was he had a really big economic dream of you know, for our world, so but I thought when I started working with tracks, and he was quite sick at the time, that I would also keep my own work going. So this book. The start of the book was starting at the same time as I was working with him, and trying to get his work finished first because he was very ill. And so that took 6 years, and then the next 4 years I was also Tracker won the Stellar Award, and Melbourne University asked me if I'd take over the Bobovia position as chair in Australian literature. So I did that for 4.5 years, and I wanted to make that job, that position work, because we don't have a lot of opportunities like that in Australia. And so it was busy, and working with Praiseworthy, but I finally got it done, and worked with my publisher, who was waiting for a number of years for that book to be finished, but he was happy with it in the end. Yeah, well, when he got the manuscript, I'd never gave him the manuscript, not the time I was doing it. But I don't really discuss my work when I'm doing it. But so the idea was to try to incorporate all those ideas about what's happening with, the ideas of global warming, what's happening to the planet, and to have a culture dreamer, who is widespread steel, or his other name's widespread or planet, and he has this vision of how he's going to take his people over the burning planet to survive and be able to tell the tale on the other side. He's an extraordinary person, and in a way, he has this. His vision came to him in a dream. And do you want me to continue?
He had a dream of a special kind of grey donkey, didn't he? That was, yes, it had to be that kind.
That's right. He had a dream where he saw this donkey. It was at night time. The dream was, in the dream it was night in the bush, and he saw this donkey in the darkness but he could see, this moonlight shone on it or something, and was a special type of grey. He had to sort of brief it just for a moment, and he said, "This is a donkey I have to find." And so he sets off on this odyssey, really, to find this donkey, and as he goes through. Becomes obsessed with greyness, what the type of grey it has to be. It has to be this platinum grey, the grey of power, the grey of armies or rocket ships or Jaguar cars, and he travels. He hasn't got any money. He's totally dependent on his own brain power and anything that he can grab along the way. And so he has this clapped out falcon that he drives all over the country in northern Australia, on these epic journeys that take months and months, and to find this donkey, and of course we've got 5 million feral donkeys in northern Australia, and he's got plenty to choose from. And at the moment, all we do is shoot the donkeys, or sterilise, the female donkeys so that they won't breed anymore. And so we got all these donkeys, and he's watching the Discovery Channel, and he can see that poor people across the world are using the dependent on donkeys to get around for transport. And he says, "Well, I'm no better than any other poor man, in the world." And so we could do this here. And when we run out of fossil fuel, we've got no more petrol to put in the cars, and diesel and all that. And so what are we going to do? And so he's going to build this, magnificent transport conglomerate. And he's going to make a mint. He's going to make a mint. He's going to make a mint for all of these people, and they're going to be rich, more rich than you could ever dream of. And so that he has, first of all, has to find this magic, this powerful donkey that's going to be this particular colour, this of platinum. And so he drives everywhere, and he goes to all different places, and he does find the donkey that looks like the right donkey, and he brings back the donkey, because it has, bring back it in the clapped out falcon. You can only bring back one at a time. And so he ends up, he's got hundreds of donkeys in Praiseworthy, and as soon as he gets back to Praiseworthy, it's a different light.
Oh no!
So under the light of Praiseworthy, the donkey is not platinum. This is not, this is another failure. This is, it's been a total waste of time. And so let's get into him. He doesn't like this idea, that he's wasting his time either. So he's got all these donkeys that he leaves, which he leaves to Dance, his wife,
That's right.
to look after. They live in the cemetery, which is contested native title land, and these donkeys are fouling up everything.
They take over, don't they?
Donkeys, they're feral donkeys, and the township itself. There's the politics, politics going on there, the major mayor, Ice Pick.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, he wants the. And his ice ladies and so forth. They have the power base there, and they want they keep this Praiseworthy as a tidy town. It's a model town. It's a town for assimilation. It's the road to assimilation, and they want to keep it that way. His idea is that you can't assimilate quick enough. And he gets, they get, the government funding because they're to play in the game, and they're doing what seems to be the right thing. And anyway, so
and it sounds, to people not familiar with the way it all works, there very much are those kind of overheads for local governments across regional, especially Aboriginal Shire councils, to get that funding. It has to look.
And it's not easy. It's
pristine.
not easy to get the funding. Yeah, and it's not easy to keep it. And people get, they do the best they can. People fight, and every day for meager returns, and even that gets eroded. And so it's a situation that I wanted to really, describe. I wanted Praiseworthy to be. The idea was to be a book to capture the times, capture the spirit of the times. Not just in our world, but our world as it extends throughout, throughout the world, the planet. And so that's what I was trying to capture. And I wanted it to be. How do I describe it? But I wanted to work on this book and to really describe what was happening in many different ways and link it into the interconnectedness of the world and who we are as people, how we were interconnected to other people and to everything else on country. Because one suffer, all suffers, and everything has a right to be able to survive and to live, and all this knowledge that we have gets eroded, and it's a really important knowledge. So anyway, this is the story, part of the story of Praiseworthy and this family, Carsman Steele, his wife Dance and children. They have two sons. One son, his name is Aboriginal Sovereignty. His father gave him the name Aboriginal Sovereignty from the day he was born, so that he'd always remember who he is. And that is he's like the dream of the community. They see the future in this lad. And things happen to him that we're going to talk about. Yeah. And they have a younger son whose name is Tommyhawk. From the day when he was born, his father just took one glance at him and said, "This child is a fascist." And
yeah, you got a bit of a tough time from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, he saw it, a lot of people do see things, and see things in as soon as they look at somebody. And so he said, well, I'm not going to give him the name that he was going to give the boy. He said, you call him what you like. So his name became Tommyhawk.
Tommyhawk, that's right. And so, and especially regarding the two sons, Absol and Tommyhawk, they seem to be going through quite a lot of turmoil themselves, independently as well, but linked in the story. You leave no stone unturned, when you're taking a look at these communities and the people in it. And you mentioned also about the light of the donkey, and it sort of brings me to the question I have about the haze cloud.
Yes.
Was that part of the light problem? Because of course then the haze has influenced a lot of what's going on.
Yeah. In Praiseworthy, there is a haze. A haze has come, and it settles on Praiseworthy, and it won't go away. And the community, the people there, they want the haze to go away. It's oppressive. It's an angry haze, and I might just read just a short passage about the haze.
Sure.
The story goes, Hay Place was a monument of the moment for some of the poorest people on earth, a hard bit of magic grown from a corpus of ancient stories that had been scattered into mystery by broken spirits creating hellfires. All those endlessly wandering fragments of ancient words were coming together and forming the lines of stories entombed in smoke clouds circumnavigating the planet. Now a ghostly windstorm from out of nowhere came more frequently, came to this place blowing dry leaves, burnt leaves, ash leaves, and spoke of the tragedies of the epical pyres of life. The wind looked at the remains of life in this place, that blew and blew these fragments away in mountainous serpentine waves that hit the soul world of an even greater local spirit. And there, dust, ash, memories, written on broken butterfly wings with black soot, all backed up into an ochre-coloured haze that ended up sitting permanently over the flatlands of the blessed be thou and more blessed be I. And it goes on and with more detail about the haze, but the people in Praiseworthy, and they have they also have a whole lot of churches. They have a church street there, of denominational churches, and they add a little bit more onto this, someone else's religion or a little bit of that. And but they have many churches, and everyone sets up their own little church there. It's just to add, you see if they can add a little bit of bonus power on what they, of ancestral power.
Yes.
And so just to see, it's whether they're looking for what might give more power, and they're not looking to the Australian government for power, but they're looking for, seeking through these churches, and that they they build them all out of whatever material that people have. Some people just have a refrigerated cardboard box. The fridge had come in, and then they have a membership of 2.
Everyone's a bit of a dreamer.
Everyone's a bit of a dreamer, and but you got to dream, and you got to be able to think about what you got to do in life, and how you can manage it with what you got, or how you got to dream to make it something else, just like Planet has been trying to do, and people will say he's crazy.
And he's on his own, yeah.
He's crazy, but gee, it's. We get a lot of our mob, coming up with ideas, and nobody will listen.
No.
And nobody will listen to the idea or give it support. And in the end, you're left on your own to come up with some sort of plan. And he's planning to save these people, when the planet burns and world becomes much hotter than what it is now. And so. At least someone's thinking about it.
Yeah, and of course, in remote regional areas, there a lot of the economic opportunities that are existing are tied to an environmental ethos, whether that's for conservation, whether it's a sort of direct action to prevent climate change. There's so much in Praiseworthy. Because, as you say, there's just so much that we're dealing with, and there's this incredible theme of, as you say, hope, plan, strategy, disappointment, start again, fatigue, and we see as the story goes on, and of course as the characters, you start to understand them a little bit more. And I found, and I think anybody from a remote Aboriginal community would certainly be able to recognise the different characters of Praiseworthy as real people in our lives, and there's a lot of pain as well in some of these characters. There's as you say, it's such a loaded, thematically it's so loaded, and of course linked to politics today. And you 10 years of writing and research, how do you prepare yourself from either the offset or every time that you come to sit down to put words down? How do you prepare to tell these quite intense and sometimes dark stories?
I'm not sure, but I wanted the book to somehow to be a work of scale, to match the scale, of what's happening in the world. The scale of what's happening in the world is in the whole of the planet, and I just felt you get one shot at these things, you know, to when you decide to sit down and write a new work or a book, you've got to make a decision, you know, about what it's going to be, and I felt it just had to be, you know, a work of scale to match the scale of what's happening, and that's why it's full, and I wanted to make it, you know, to add it up really, and to keep building and building and building to try to match just what's happening in the world. I really believe that we need works of scale, and we need more works of scale because you know, just the world where it is at the moment, you know, it's we have to be paying attention to that. Writers need to be paying attention. Literature needs to be paying attention to that, and we need to be paying attention to making the world more literature literate. So that we get to understand, you know, where we are and where we might be going. We got to get out of, you know, just, you know, our own backyard, and I really believe that, you know, but you know what, I'm not just talking about our communities, but I'm talking about, you know, what a lot of writers will do, you know, just stay in their own little home and, you know, a little, you know, area of interest, and I think we've got to do much broader than that. And I learned that, you know, from my grandmother, you know, when I was this high, and the people who I've worked with over the years, some of the really finest, you know, elders that we've had, and you know, that I've had the privilege of working with, and who were so wise, you know, and I remember when, as a young woman, you know, when I was working, you know, at you know, Cloncarry, Mount Isa, in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and then, you know, in Central Australia, wherever I've been, and that they wanted us to look further, you know, finances and ideas, and because, and not just, you know, stay here and yes, we've got everything here, and there's so much knowledge here, but we also, we're fighting the battles of our lives, and we had to look further. So I got very used to doing that. You know, I always had a lot of research work to do, and a lot of writing to do when I was first working in some of our organisations, and where people, you know, particularly in Mount Isa, when I started.
So you scribed, did you, as well?
Yeah, I was scribed, and our meetings were epic. Yep. Epical and long-lasting and ongoing, and they wanted me, because I had some education, to write it all down, write every word that they said, and you know, I always, you know, say, oh, us more here, we talk a bit slower, you know, and so I could actually write it all down, and they wanted every word recorded, or who said what, you know. And that's they were giving me a very strong lesson, because at that age I thought, well, why can't everything happen that we say should happen? You know, it just seems easy to me, you know, and we should be able to have this all, you know, fixed up and all finished. And but they were teaching me to listen. They were teaching me to hear, and that was a very, very good lesson in life, to be able to sit down, you know, and have the privilege of hearing them talk, and learn something instead of just being in their head.
Yeah. And as we have the chance to learn from you today, and I think just that you're able to capture so much of not only sentiment, but of what people actually have to say, and be able to world build in a way that, you know, mob from the community can totally recognise. I think that's a wonderful thing, and it gives, well, hopefully will give to anybody who reads the book, you know, the opportunity to think in a more outside of the sound bites, outside of the echo chambers of whether you're yay or nay a certain policy action if you're in the space. Yeah, it's not a lot of people who spend a lot of time on Aboriginal affairs spends much time getting to know Aboriginal people or places. So,
well,
would you say that's fair?
Yeah. But also I had to learn, you know, that working, you know, as you know, as a scribe and then in research, and you're getting better educated because people wanted you to be better educated, and it also, when I thought I would write too, what I did was, because I was used to looking at what Indigenous people were doing the world over, I read, you know, widely, and I continued to read widely of writers across the world. I had to find a particular type of writers across the world to find out how I might write here, and build on that.
Do you find with other, you know, traditional or First Nations, if that's a term that is applied in other areas, do you find other writers who are, especially for countries with the colonial past, do you find that there's a sort of, in the zeitgeist, people are saying the same things, that perhaps that the things in Praiseworthy that you address might be across the broader literature? Do you find that that's a change that's coming?
Yes. What I was particularly looking at is, you know, we know the colonial issue here very, very well, but what I was looking for is how people write from a point of view of having an unbroken association, you know, with their own traditional country, and whether there are writers from Africa or India or China or you know, Europe, Irish writers, you know, American Indian, the whole box of dice. You know, that's what I was looking at. Is unbrokenness, you know, and how do you write that? How do you write the all times? That's what I was looking at. How do you write the all times? You know, all times are important. I learned that, you know, from you know, the Mexican writer Carlos Fuentes, and he said that all, you know, in Mexico all times are important and no time has ever been resolved. When he said that, that just clicked. All times are important, no time has ever been resolved. And we know that, you know, from in the ancient past, you know, there's the stories, the law stories that, you know, have continued on thousands of years, you know, until now, and still kept. That there's a connection there, you know, why those stories are there. There's important lessons about those stories, and they're still important. They're still important to this day, and so that was the journey, you know, of trying to understand that, you know, how do you write the old times, and trying to build it from there.
And it is, for anybody who has read it or begun reading Praiseworthy or is familiar with Alexis's work, it can, if you don't mind me saying, it can be, you know, it can be confronting to some people who are perhaps not familiar with the literary form of that. I mean, I'm mindful to throw open to the floor, but I have sort of a question, and I think you may have already answered it in a sense. You're talking about all the storytellers that have influenced you, the other writers, and, you know, across with shared experiences in a sense. Your grandmother as well. As I was doing my research, there was a quote that had been mentioned by Jane Gleason White, which is, what she, as an Alexis, is doing is yet to be fully understood. But and I suppose to in some senses, but to me, when I'm reading your work, there's repetition. That's something that's been mentioned a lot. But with every fold of repetition there's revelation, and it reminded me, and I could almost feel you know, with me while I was reading it, almost looking over my shoulder and going, oh, okay, I see myself there, so you know, get on to that. But having the opportunity to reminding me of the stories and how stories were told by our old people. I'm wondering if sort of thinking about yourself as a First Nation storyteller in the way that you craft the works, especially Praiseworthy, you know, could you answer Jane, and what are you doing? You've also got a political sentiments as well. What are you doing and saying, I suppose?
I think it's still evolving what I'm doing, and what I felt when I was writing the book, that I had to write off key. Okay, I had to find, you know, I wanted to write, and I found it was an Aboriginal rhythm, and you know, from how people talk, and I think about that, you know, how people talk, how people tell stories, and how, you know, law stories are told, and it goes over and over, it builds and builds and builds, and so this is what it's doing here, building and building, and in an Aboriginal rhythm. And I was listening to music like Yidaki.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you listen.
You know, and you know, from the Gulf we say, you know, we're of one heartbeat. So what is that heartbeat? And the way I started to think about it was through the music, you know, through how does the rhythm of the country feel, and what does it sound like, you know, and I was thinking of Yidaki, and you know, and even the instrument, how the spiritual connection that's made, you know, from how the instrument is made. And when, you know, I watched, you know, listened to an old man talking about this in an exhibition, and he was saying about how he's connected through country, through the music and the pulse of the music, and so I was listening to that and thinking a lot about that, and trying to get that beat, and also of women singing or clapsticks, you know, you know, that constant rhythm, that beat that's going on, all, you know, constantly. So that's what I was trying to do.
And it definitely comes through. But but it is, as you say, it's a 10-year work, and that rhythm is maintained throughout. One question
But I also say there's other rhythms, you know, that are associated very much the same.
Right.
The rhythm of you know, Indian raga music, you know, it goes on, and it's a constant beat. And the same is with classical Chinese music, particularly with the Kuchin, and which I really like. If I go travel anywhere, I listen to the music, you know, the music from those countries, and so that's what's happening there is and also just putting it out there, you know. It's just it's not a simple story. What's happening in the world, you can't capture it in this little novel or that little novel or whatever. And we need works of scale, so we need to have a literate world.
Yes, we were talking before about, you know, the need for you know, funding agencies and governments to, you know, have a bit more of a focus on literature. But just to cap that one off, and I think we should open to the floor soon. Do you write in bursts? Do you write little bits as you go? How do you, as you're working on this rhythm, how do you maintain it as you put down the words themselves?
I constantly work. I'm a constant worker, and it's and if I'm not actually working, you know, on writing, I have notebooks, and I carry notebooks with me. I carry a book in my head until it's done. I carried this book definitely in my head, you know. Through the years I was writing it, I dream about the book, and most of the dreams I had, you know, 101 dreams of getting lost, of being lost and never finding my way back, and so that was very. I had to keep on working and constantly building, but also keeping that rhythm flowing and the story going at the same pace, and keeping it connected. So it's I always talk about this too, about building a novel is like a work of a structural engineer, or building this huge building, and the building feels like a rickety building really while you're working on it, and can easily fall down and be no good, you know, and the structure won't work. But that's what happens is in the work. It's also a very funny book.
It is.
It is.
That's how our people are. We in some of the harshest of conditions, we have joy and love and humour, and because there really is so much in Praiseworthy, and we've barely scratched the surface, unfortunately, in our short time. Of course, each of the characters have such a, you know, I really wanted to have some time to talk about dance in particular. She's fascinating to me, but
she's the mother.
Yeah.
She's very knowledgeable about and associated through law and culture to various butterflies and moths. So that's a big part of her story in there, apart from dealing with the donkeys that the town wants to get rid of.
But yeah, so look, I suppose on that note, and there is, please, I don't implore you, have a read. There's so much here, and then, you know, follow Alexis's journey as well. You're probably about to head off and continue the circuit that you've launched from last year. There will be more, explorations into Praiseworthy. So please, you know, definitely keep up to date on that. Does anybody have any questions for Alexis before we wrap up today? Yes.
When you were working as scribe, and as you said, it was a very slow process because everybody spoke slowly so that you captured every single word. When you'd done that, there must have been a point in the day where you went back and reread that. In your rereading, did you hear things that you didn't hear in the meeting?
No. I think we were all in a really busy world and far too busy. So the scribe wrote down everything. And the record was there, but nobody really, used the record, and they just wanted the record there. So, whatever was said, could be brought up in another meeting and not referred to. You know, if someone wanted to refer to what Jack said in the last meeting, and say, well, they had to think about what Jack had said, and now we're coming to task with Jack.
It happens all the time. I think we've got a question down the middle at the back.
Hello, Alexis. I'm Elizabeth from James Cook University in Cairns here. I just mainly wanted to say thank you for writing that book. There were so many elements to it that I absolutely loved and appreciated, and having read it, I could turn around and read it again. For me, it's a story that feels like it's always been there and will stay with me always. I was really impressed. I mean, I really loved how you wove the humour with the some serious messages. And I read somewhere that you had written this for Indigenous readers, and I'm curious about the character of Ice Pick, for example, this tension that's always there between sovereignty and assimilationists. And I'm just wondering what feedback you've had from Indigenous readers. Does anyone sort of reflect, particularly on, what's in there? If you could comment on that, thank you.
Well, I don't really get a lot of feedback in lots of ways, you know, and Jack's read it. What do you think?
Love it. It really is incredible. It really is incredible. That's short feedback.
Yeah. No, it comes. That feedback will come. What's really cool is a good friend of mine, Jackie Katona, who's a Mirror woman, you know, from Arnhem Lane, and you might know of her. She narrated, did the audio version of the Swan book, and she's just finished doing Praiseworthy.
Oh.
And she's doing a PhD in law. She's got to have a PhD in this year, but she took it on and she wanted to. She said, so I wouldn't let anybody read it. and not do a good job. And I know Jackie will do a fantastic job, and she's just got the voice for it. And so everyone is excited. The publisher in New York is excited, and it'll be out in a couple of months, I think. They're already advertised it before she'd actually sat down and did the recording.
It's a good way to make it happen.
And they even said how long the record, how many hours it is, down to the minute. And she hadn't even done it. So anyway, so it's finished now, and she finished last Wednesday. And she'll go back and do a little bit of mopping up, whatever they might need in the editing. And so it'll be out in the next couple of months. And since that's out, I will be making sure some people and some communities get a copy so they can listen to it. And I will already talk to people in Karma Radio, because I did a big interview with them the other day. And I said, why not put it on air as episodes or something like that? And I said, yeah, what a good idea, I'll do it.
And I suppose all the essays and the critical analysis will come in time. We are almost out of time. Does anybody have any other questions for Alexis? Yes. Thank you. This lady.
Alexis, thank you for a very interesting talk. And just listening to you when you read started reading it, I was just that metaphor of that grey donkey, that specific platinum colour, and then you said the start of it about you were wondering where Indigenous people fitted it in the future. What is the metaphor of the donkey, and do they find a future or is that a spoiler? I don't know.
Maybe a bit of a spoiler, but he does find this platinum donkey. But the donkey is a bit old, and the donkey, he has very long conversations with this donkey, particularly when they're travelling around in the clapped out falcon together, and the donkey it has no desire to be the masthead or the major transport conglomeration, and rather see its retirement years doing something else with his own herd or whatever. And so I have fun doing that, and so the donkey is it does find the perfect grey. And all the greyness that you can find. He doesn't want dishwater grey or anything.
I
50 Shades.
Like you have sort of weaved, I think in the sense, I haven't read the book, but just listening to you talk, it's like the myths and legends in you, or your history and your story, come through in your telling of it, because it's not the politics, it's not a politics, but it's weaving with myth and legend, which is the best way of storytelling, I think. And when you're talking about the rhythms and stuff, even though I haven't read it, I was just thinking of the clapsticks, and when you talked about raga and the Chinese, and I thought, yes, you do seem to have, I don't know if it's right to say, a mythic weave in all your stories.
Maybe. But also the music is important, the sound and the beat and that, and just be back up here. I just see countrymen just everywhere, listening to music, you know, and if they're not singing, people have got little radios just beside them, just listening to music. And I think, yeah, we are really musical people. I listen to music all the time. Very eclectic tastes in music, and it's just not only culture and the stories and mind you, this is all fiction. I'm not doing things, you know, saying things that, you know, that we can't say, and but also the, you know, the fun and the humour and the people. It is just we've known how to carry our load lightly in a way, and that's, you know, we see the absurd in everything, and the absurd gets built on, you know, and it becomes folklore. You know, about what what the Australian government's done this time, you know, and it's madness. We're dealing with madness all the time, and then we see it, and we use it, and it keeps us. We survive somehow because we're dealing with this all the time, and the one way we deal with it is this feeling of lightness, being able to carry that load, and while you figure out what you're going to do in the future, how you're going to figure it all out. And this is very much you know, something that Italo Cabano, the Italian writer, you know, in his last book, 6 Memos for the New Millennium, he has one essay there called On Lightness, and he talks about this similar sort of thing, you know, of being able to carry your responsibilities, you know, lightly, so that you can get through some of the things that you have to. So, you know, just, you know, crumble in a heap and die. And we got for it, you know, we've come through, you know, millennia, you know, 60,000, maybe more years of culture, you know, that our ancestors brought us to this day. And they didn't do it. You know, they've gone through hard times and that too in the past, and through ice ages and whatever. And they did it not from the, you know, hoping to survive or people say you've got to have hope. No, they did it because they desired life, they desired to bring our culture through, and that's what it is.
And Professor Alexis Wright, on that very very timely and resonating and beautiful note about our people and our journey. Thank you very much for sharing the story and journey of Praiseworthy and for being part of the festival today. Please give Alexis Wright a round of applause.
I want to thank Jack. Jack has put many hours into reading this book, to prepare for today, and you've done a phenomenal job, and you are fantastic. Thank you very much.
And thank you, everybody. We do have to, make way for the next session now. Please, if you want to meet Alexis, have any other questions, would like to have a book signing, can please meet outside.